Well, good evening. Do a couple of things there. Yeah, we'll take that guy around. This is going to come right straight off, isn't it? Yep. All right, we're going to do a little adjusting. All right, so I took a couple of minutes, about 5 minutes, and I did a little origami thing there I thought I'd show you. How many of you do origami on occasion? Have you done something before, something you're particularly proud of? How many of you, this is your first time? So you feel bold and you feel proud about it? That's nice. How many of you can see someone with an origami creation right now that you would not be able to name or identify? Yeah. Well, I can teach you how to do that one later, probably, if you're a quick learner. But what I'd like for you to do right now, first of all, by the way, it is quite a pleasure to have this time to share tonight. I'm Dave Ferguson, the director of the undergraduate leadership program, and we were invited as the leadership program to take one of the University Vespers. And when we were talking about what we would do, which one should we help lead with, they got to talking about the Ministry Expo, and I am so interested in passionate people who don't just sit on the sidelines, that I thought, now that's something I think we should get connected with. I love some of what we've been talking about in Scripture already this year, and I direct your attention, whether on the screen or in your Bibles, on your phones, to Isaiah 43 as we begin. And I'll read from the New International Version, Isaiah 43. Isaiah 43, verse 18 and 19. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland. See, I am doing a new thing. I'd like to invite you to bow again in prayer, something I need as we share. Would you bow? Father, thank you for your love. Bless us as we talk, as we consider your word, as we consider our lives. Be here. Challenge us. In the name of Jesus, we claim that promise. Amen. Well, you see the words, be present. I'd like to focus a little bit on being present and being involved and being engaged and being alive and being awake. I'd like to do so first by introducing you to processionary caterpillars. I don't know, how many of you have heard of processionary caterpillars? Do you know what these are? These are furry things. That is not one processionary caterpillar. Those are a long line of processionary caterpillars. They get their name because the first one starts setting out, and I've actually watched a YouTube clip where they're just kind of a little huddled mass of them, and they're kind of like just kind of like bouncy, jerking motions. They're not doing anything. And then sooner or later, one starts to head off in a certain direction. And she, I'm not entirely certain how this works, but as that one starts to head off, it lays down a silk thread, and the one next to it decides, okay, well, there goes our buddy, and so I'm following the thread. And that one lays down a silk thread, and the one behind it lays down a silk thread, and they just go in a line. They follow. As soon as somebody's going, they just go. And I don't know if you have a friend like that will follow you anywhere. You probably have been in some moment forewarned by your parents that this is just a horrifying thing to consider. If your friends all jumped off a bridge, would you? Well, there was thread. I was just going. I first learned about processionary caterpillars in a book called Think Better. Love great books. It was a tremendous book about innovative thinking, Think Better, by Tim Herson. And he began to describe a naturalist who loved studying all sorts and forms of nature, but identified these caterpillars and decided he was going to do an experiment with these caterpillars back right around the break between 18th and between 1800 and 1900, about 1886, I believe it is, 96. Jean-Henri Fabre. And so he decides he's going to set this situation up where he's luring these caterpillars toward food. I don't know if they smell it, if they sense it, I don't know. But they're beginning a trail, and they start to line up just like these guys, and they're going toward the food, and he lures them up a ramp and onto the rim of a pot. Maybe you've heard about this experiment all those years ago. And as they came up the rim of the pot, food in the center of the pot eventually, but not yet, he lures them around the rim, around the rim, around the rim, and they make a full circle all the way around the rim of the pot. And then when they get right behind the last caterpillar up off the ramp, he brushes off the other caterpillars and removes the ramp, and now there's a full ring of caterpillars all the way around the rim of the pot. Now, they've been laying down a silk thread, and just following the thread in front of them. Interestingly, the guy that was in front now has no idea he was in front anymore. And now is like, well, what do you know? Something to follow. And so they just keep going around and around this pot. About this point, Fabre places food, favorite food of the caterpillars, in the center of the pot, no more than 12 inches away from the rim. But the caterpillars ignore it because they're following the trail. They're following the silk around the rim of this pot. For a whole day, hungry caterpillars set out to find food. They just travel around the rim. Day 2, travel around the rim. 3, 4, 5, 6.5 days. These caterpillars incessantly, slowly traveling around the rim, apparently a full circuit, about 500 full circuits. They're not moving that fast. And they were slowing. Finally, 6.5 days into the experiment, caterpillars began to fall off the rim of the pot. And when enough fell off so that I'm not following anybody anymore, then finally, caterpillars broke from the rim into the middle and found food. Fascinatingly, Tim Herson sums up this scenario with the following quote: "As with the caterpillars in Fabre's experiment, sometimes the thing that saves us is that things go so drastically wrong that we're forced out of our processions. Our pattern has been so counterproductive that the circle we've created can no longer sustain itself and it breaks apart. And with no more circle, we are forced to find new ways of doing things." Have you noticed that if you do the same thing long enough, you start to kind of fall asleep on it a bit? Cross your legs for too long, right? Leg goes a little dead. When you behave in certain ways and you have certain patterns, the thinking slows down and it all stops. And I'm wondering, in the world in which we live, if things aren't a bit broken by some patterns that we've fallen into. And maybe, and this is what I wonder about this passage in Isaiah, maybe it's time for some new things. And I thought I would come to you about it because you seem, in my interactions with you, as I spend time with students at Andrews University, you seem capable of new things. But can I also say, I've noticed that you're also capable, almost as much as me, of falling asleep, of going dead, of just following the silk trail, around and around, forgetting who is even going anywhere or where that might have led. And so as we consider I want to invite you to think back, which might be counterintuitive, by the way, to the idea of breaking out into something new. Remembering something from our past might be a little bit counterintuitive, but I want to suggest to you, if you go back, you find your way back, a little further back, and you're suddenly, lo and behold, you're at the creation story, and God comes upon this earth, and in the beginning, God creates all things. And then he creates mankind. And you remember, before doing so, he has this conversation. Let us make mankind in our image. I wonder what the image of God even is. I really strongly believe that at the core of the image of who God is, it is a creative, generative, everyday, new kind of God. And this God would create us in his image. And by the way, what's the first task that God gives to mankind? He says, okay, now here's what I want you to do. What? What? Multiply. That's actually, that's down the list. Just calm down. He's my friend, so I can kind of pick on him a little. Which, by the way, we could talk about creativity in the fact that God has given us the power to make in our image, which is a fascinating idea. But there's a task that goes before all of that, and that, I think I heard somebody say it somewhere out there. Name the animals. I find it yes. All I heard was aminals, but I think it was name the animals. It's fascinating to consider that God creates all these things but leaves it unfinished. You realize the only thing God names is us. It's as if he's saying, okay, now look, I've created you now. I've got this all set up. Oh, I'm almost done, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let you take it the rest of the way. So come, Adam, stand here. I'm going to parade the animals in front of you, and this is going to be the most amazing, incessant, nonstop brainstorming task the world has ever seen. You're going to, without having really spoken much, quite honestly, you're going to come up with sounds for every living thing. Names, go. I don't know when you'd start getting frustrated if I said, make as many different sounds as you can. Begin. But Adam names everything. God says, I make you in my image, and I make you creative. And I wonder sometimes at the fact that we are often least creative when it comes to our relationship with him. Doesn't it feel a little bit like your creativity drains a little when you walk into church? Or at least corporately somehow? There are some of us, by the way, that's not true of, and I really am glad about that. But I worry about us giving away our creativity and letting go of that and going a little bit dead, going a little bit unconscious. And maybe you've had an opportunity to sit still in your relationship with God, which is an important thing to do, but you do long enough without actually moving in his name or for his sake, and you go to sleep. So I'm going to encourage you to be present on this campus and in this world. I'm going to encourage you to be creative. I'm going to ask you to consider things that nobody else has considered. One of the most wonderful thoughts I've been in conversation about, from my perspective, is what if the things that God really wants from us, some of the things that could be done in his name, what if some of the best ideas haven't been thought of yet? I mean, do you think they're all taken, the good seats on that conversation? Or could there be some really amazing things that haven't been tried, haven't been thought of? And if they're going to be thought of, by whom then? Maybe by people who haven't been marching around the rim of the pot so long. Maybe by somebody who is broken free. Or maybe you're one of those who has really quite honestly experienced friends falling right and left. And it's desperate now. And about time to break from that path. We're going to share a few things. I'm going to give you just a little preamble here. As we finish up tonight, you'll be dismissed out to the Ministry Expo. And I'm going to introduce this little idea that we'll kind of unpack as we go along in the next few minutes. And it's this. I believe, just take origami as an example, I believe you can create beauty by following the pattern. But have you ever been in a job where you had to do the exact same maneuver over and over? I worked in a chair factory in high school. Thoop, thoop, thoop. Thoop, thoop, thoop. Thoop, 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 thoop. Nail gun. All day long, all summer long. Exact same pattern. First couple of times, interesting and creative. In fact, the great job, by the way, is at that particular factory, if they got a new chair, a new kind of chair, they would have one of their best workers go and work on it and create the kind of the template for how much time it should take for a worker to do it. Well, that guy had an awesome job, but he was also kind of, well, we weren't always happy because he did it faster than some of the rest of us could have. But he got to always work on new stuff instead of the same thing over and over and over. It is quite possible that the thing that will unlock your heart exists already. And if that's true, that is such a fantastic thing. And there is a probability that there's something out there that exists, represented by tables on the lawn or on the walkway there, that exists that if you were to engage in, it would start your heart up a bit. And you should look around and check out those tables, consider the things that you might engage in and be active and be alive and be present, be counted for, somehow make a difference on this planet that because you are here, things have changed. But as we were talking about what we might do tonight, it also occurred to us that for some of us, what would really jumpstart our heart won't be out there yet. And so as you go down the steps, after we dismiss, when you go down the steps, you'll notice the very first tables you come to will have balloons kind of arcing above that have the letters on that, depending on the wind, will likely say dream. It might say mirrored, but it just depending. You sort it out in your words with friends it up there a little bit. And we have some of our students, some of our leadership students, some of their friends, students that are really interested in conversations that will be there to just help you dream. So that if you're a person who thinks, you know what, I don't even have any idea, I just know there's nothing that I want to do, that's all. They would probably like to talk to you and really test that theory, kind of poke around in your mind, philosophically, not really, to see if, in fact, there isn't something in there that you really wish for. Maybe you're somebody who has had an idea and you've spoken of it a variety of times before, even to people in power, and there seems to be kind of interest, but then it never takes traction. And you just like to talk about that idea. Maybe you have a fully formed idea and you're thinking to yourself, I just need somebody who will help me get this started. It could even be that you've got an idea that you have no intention of being involved with at all. You just think it'd be great if somebody else did. We want to know about the new things God is calling out from you. And let me say this too. I believe a Christian does not have sacred times and parts of their life and secular times and parts of their life. I believe either you are fully human child of God, or you've chosen to walk or drift away from Him. And so I don't think there are any particular parameters about what ideas you can talk about. Talk about ideas. Be a child of God in the middle of that and see what God unlocks. We'd love to do that. Make your way to all the tables. Find your way to something that resonates with you. But spend some moments, if you'd like, dreaming. It's fascinating to me. Dusty desert and a man who has fled his conscience and God's calling, and God tracks him down in the desert with a bush that erupts in flames, not that big a deal in the middle of the desert. Big deal in the desert is when it stays burning for long periods of time. Because everything is so dry, you would think, and it's over. You remember the interaction between Moses and the bush, which is really bizarre, the kinds of conversations that go on in Scripture, and people stick around and talk to donkeys. But God is there in the fiery bush, and Moses gets it, and finally is beginning to relent to God's pushing that he go and talk, go and help free God's people from Egypt. But Moses has a problem. He has an issue. Do you remember this? I don't know what to call you. What name shall I give you? How shall I refer to you? What do I tell him? Who do I tell him you are? And you remember what God says? He says, I am that I am. Which, avoiding the question, that's what it seems like, right? Well, just, it's me. When they want to know my name, tell them it's the one who is. Okay. We'll see how that flies. But I feel like somewhere deep in there, there's a statement and a calling to you and to me that we follow this God who is present. He is present when we want to walk away from him. He is present when we are in need and when we don't need. He is present. He is the God who is present. And so my challenge to you is that you consider, and in a second here, I'm about to invite some friends to come join me. But I'm going to ask you to consider being present and asking God to help reveal to you unique and different ways that might be true. So I'm going to invite 3 friends to come join me here right now. Phil, Christy, and Kyle. If you guys don't mind coming and joining me, that would be great. Come have a seat over here, and there are some microphones. I know some of them are very comfortable talking to people from a stage. Others are not. Christy? But that's okay. How are you guys doing? All right. Well, I heard a story that I wanted to ask you about a little bit. How many here have heard anything about free intelligent conversations? How many of you know anything about that? I started hearing about this a little bit this summer, and it intrigued me. First of all, I was a guy who in college, my roommate and I, we had no money, but we would go to the mall and just walk around and figure out crazy, weird things to talk to people about. Sometimes we would go into a store and just start selling to customers. We were found out a couple of times, and oddly enough, they didn't stop us, which, hey, we were doing well and on very low commission. So, okay, Kyle. It's my understanding that this kind of started from some thinking that you were doing. I'm curious, could you tell us briefly, what is this about? Why did you decide to do this, and what is it about?
Hello.
It seems that it's there now.
I started meeting with a group of guys who kind of just wanted to bounce ideas off each other. So we were meeting maybe once a week, and they're like, yo, just go home, think about some ideas. Let's see what we can put together. I went home, and I was reading one day, and then an idea hit me of, how about going out to Chicago with the sign that says Free Intelligent Conversation and kind of see where that takes us?
Okay, so Let's go to some large metropolis area with critical mass of people. Let's take a sign and stand there with it.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. Okay, all right then. And how did that go? I mean, tell me, Phil, about your first experience trying that. Give it a go. Give it a shout.
Is this on? Okay. My first time I went out, Kyle had been asking me to go, and I said, okay, fine, I'll come. And I am actually the kind of person that doesn't necessarily like to meet new people. So going to do this wasn't...
This sounds perfect for you, Phil.
It wasn't something that I was like, yeah, this is going to be the best. Like, let me go meet a bunch of strangers and talk to them. I'd prefer to spend the evening at home in my room by myself. But I said, you know what, let's try this out. So, but I do like people. So I went and I held the sign that you're seeing people on the screen hold. And I talked to the first time I talked to maybe 45 different people. And I had a phenomenal experience.
First day you went out, you talked to 45 people that you didn't know.
Yeah.
So the people holding the sign, Christy, who are they? And they're down there too.
I don't know who that is.
You don't know who they are? I'm not asking necessarily their name.
Oh.
What are they doing in these photos? I mean, why? What's the photo about?
Okay. The people in the photos, actually, this was my group. This is outside Lollapalooza. Basically, we talked to... Sorry. Basically, we talked to people, and we kind of initiated by just saying most people just want to know what we're doing, and then sometimes they get lost and then kind of walk away. But a lot of people actually do want to have conversation, and so if they talk to us for any length of time, we tell them, hey, do you want to take a picture for our Instagram, for our whatever? And usually they're really excited about that, and my particular group was super duper excited. But other times they're like, no, I don't want to be on internet, I don't know, whatever. But generally speaking, the people are pretty excited about what we're doing.
Okay, so are you guys getting this? So let's just ask this. So, okay, I'm a guy in Chicago, and I'm walking along, and what is it that happens?
I am holding a sign right here, and usually your curiosity can't let you walk away. And then you're like...
I start talking to other people about you. Does that happen ever?
Yes.
That happens every time.
Do they treat guys and gals the same on the street? I mean, seems like maybe that would be different. I don't know.
Sometimes.
Okay, so there are other times apparently. So how does? Why do this?
I am generally the kind of person of don't complain about a problem, fix it. And I feel that there's a problem in terms of what people find important in terms of conversation. So people will talk to you about sports, people will talk to you about the weather, and then they're like, oh, what's that guy's religious beliefs? Or what does that guy hold as important? And people don't even know that. Like, I know people who I see every day on this campus, and I don't even, I've known for years now, know those important things. And to me, it's like those things should come up first. That should be primary. So I go out and talk to people about the things I think should be primary.
Okay. So that's the free, intelligent, even important conversation bit. So now, Phil, you're one of my students. We know each other fairly well. I know you're a guy who cares about the cause of Christ, about kingdom issues. So is this kind of your way to preach the gospel? Is there on the reverse side of that sign, is there like a John 3:16?
Not quite. Free IC, as we call it, is what it is, intelligent conversation. Whatever that conversation ends up being is okay with me. One question I really like to ask people when I go out, usually they ask oh, what are you doing, what are you about? I explain it, conversation gets going. Then if there's a dull moment, is this still on? I always ask the question, I say, what do you think is the single most valuable or important thing that life has to offer? And they'll pause, like, oh, that's a hard question, blah, blah. And then they'll give me some answer. And usually then they'll ask me the same question. And my answer to that question, I say, God is the single most important thing or aspect of my life. And then beyond that, they'll say, okay, so what do you believe? So you believe there is a God. What are the details of your belief? And a lot of times that starts a conversation in that realm of things. But I talk about everything. It's not specifically just that.
So, Christy, do you have people who think you're trying to do something more than just converse? I mean,
yeah, we have a lot of people who think we're out there for money or that we're like trying to push like a certain political beliefs. A lot of people also think we're there for like church reasons, which is kind of great because it does give a lot of the members an opportunity for like implicit witnessing. Because if you just go out and you say like, oh, I'm Adventist, I do this, then people are like, okay, cool, and then they leave. And so if you kind of just talk to them about normal things that are important to them, it takes down those barriers so they can actually talk to you about what's important to them, and they're not biased against you to start with.
Okay. So Kyle, then, I mean, Ministry Expo going on here. So is this a ministry then?
Not particularly, but the reason I say that is because our objective is not ministry, but I believe that if you claim to be something and something like Seventh-day Adventist, it should probably permeate everything in your life. So implicitly, yes, explicitly, no.
Which does kind of point to the thing I was talking about a second ago, and that is sometimes we behave as if there are sacred times, and we kind of get on our horse and we ride hard whatever task it is, and because we know what your zip code is, you're getting a visit from us and maybe an invitation to come be where we are and talk about Scripture or whatever. Or, you know, it can go so far as to be, I know that you're generally probably going to go to the bathroom at some point, so we're going to put something on the urinal there to get your attention. Whatever, I'm right, but that's when we're doing our spiritual stuff. So you're hesitant to let the word ministry land on this, it seems to me.
Because I feel like that the pre-connotations that the word ministry has is kind of crippling. I've had people come up to some of us and they say, if this is about religion, tell me now because I don't want to know anything. And they wait for you to say, and you're like, we're not here to talk about religion. And they're like, all right, then they're willing to talk.
How many times does the person who says that, do you end up talking about religion with?
And for me, in the conversation, I'd say like 90% of the time, there are some religious ties. Whether people who claim to be Christian, atheist, agnostic, whatever, there's always some.
Fascinating. So with some regularity, the very person said, no, wait, you're not here to try to do something on the religion thing, ends up kind of asking you questions about what you believe. and you talk about, because you don't have that kind of heavy string or even rope attached somehow. That's fascinating. Last question, because I know when we talked, you were sharing, Christy, that this is a completely unnatural and in many ways abhorred thing for you to be doing right now, being up front in front of a bunch of people, and yet you're doing this in a city with a pile of people. What's the difference?
When you're talking to people one-on-one, you can kind of like gauge what they're thinking and kind of like if they're interested or not. If you're talking in front of a huge group of people, it's a little different. Self-presentation takes up like a lot of energy, I guess. And if you're gauging like what you're doing with all these people, it's kind of stressful. But on the street, it's different. People are a lot more, I don't know, like receptive, like I said. I think that communication either way is important. And so for me, it's kind of like in sports, I guess. Like if you're good at dribbling or something, you don't just dribble forever. Like if you're bad at passing, you have to learn to pass. And so, or you can just, because like dribbling is pleasant if you're already good at it. And so in this case, I'm bad at passing. I'm also bad at passing in real sports. But yeah, so like you work on the parts of yourself that aren't exactly where you want them to be. So talking in front of people, like I can deal with it, I guess, but I prefer not to.
Well, you're doing just fine. I think there are about 14 of you, right, that go and do this. You were doing it 2 days a week all through the summer, and you're going to continue not at that pace, but at some pace that makes some sense with school through the course of the year because you find this valuable enough. Am I right? I think I owe it to you to point out something that came out in our conversation, and that is that my bringing you up here to talk about this is because I find the idea fascinating at its core, not because we're going to set up a table now out there, and I encourage you to come. We're going to have a bus sometime next week with everybody go do free, intelligent conversations together. No, this isn't an attempt to drum up more people. In fact, you'd be resistant to that because you are being really careful about exactly who and how you're doing it. The point is, you had kind of a ludicrous idea, decided to try it, and it's actually bubbled into something that is resonating not just in terms of relationships and interesting conversations, but other people are paying attention. Chicago Tribune put an article together about what you're doing. People have asked you to go present different places and that sort of thing, if I understand correctly. Well, I wanted to talk to you because I think what I really hope to convey is this is a new thing that could completely crash and burn or go nowhere, be gone tomorrow, whatever. But you tried it because there was some kind of an itch to do so, and I wanted to champion that thinking. And so thank you very much for coming up and talking with us a little bit more. You can go ahead and set those there. Would you thank them for being this courageous? I'd like to invite another friend of mine to come forward. Ben Corte, where are you, Ben? Ben, come on up. I'm going to sit in one of the big people chairs. I felt dwarfed by Phil there, which should have been fine, but you know. Okay, so now point one, what are you wearing?
I'm wearing Google Glass.
Google Glass. How many of the rest of you have Google Glass? I don't see anybody. Okay, so he's wearing Google Glass, and I've heard little bits about this, but I don't know too much about it. How did you get involved with this? You were telling me about it. I thought it was a fascinating thing. Go ahead.
Okay, I heard about the Google Glass project like a long time ago. Been watching on YouTube and whatnot, and they had on their website an opportunity you could apply to see if you could get one. So I applied March of this year. Yeah, I applied in March, and I got an email from Google.
Now wait, time out. Could you have just looked up into that little thing and scrolled through your calendar somehow?
Yes.
I'm bitter now. Go ahead. He could tell us anything, though, that's going on in there. Oh, yeah, there's tons of things happening right now. I can identify by facial recognition everyone in the fourth row. Go ahead.
So I applied in March, and I got an email from, sorry.
Do you have a call coming in? What's happening right now? Do you really?
That actually just happened. Anyways,
okay.
in July, and they said that I had 40 days to...
Hello? No, I'm sorry. I'm just completely distracted now.
I had 40 days to come and pick them up if I wanted to be a part of the project. And you had to go to LA, New York, or San Francisco. You had to go to like the Google store in one of those three cities. But luckily, I was going to California anyways for a dental workshop. So the timeline worked where I just...
Unless you can turn a microphone on in that deal.
Okay,
so let's just recap here because I was a little distracted. Number one, you had to go to, and you went to LA?
Yeah.
So you had to go to the Google mega, place, and you had to see what's happening down there? Hold higher. Anyway, yeah. Can you just text him that in his eyeball? Anyway, so you go to California for something else, but you already knew about this. You have to show up within a certain time frame, buy the glasses. Now is this beta testing? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, they haven't announced when they're mass releasing it, but they have what they call as Google Glass Explorers, and we beta test, and they get all the glitches out. So when it comes out for everyone, it's even better than...
Okay, well, that's interesting, if a little embittering. But so then you were telling me that you've decided to work on some app development for the Google Glass, right?
Yeah. Right now, the glass is a really cool idea, but that's kind of all. So it's not worth the money unless you're really trying to do something with it development-wise. I am not a computer scientist.
Yeah, see, I didn't think so.
I know nothing really
But
about
you're
that.
developing apps for Google Glass. That really fills me with confidence.
But I have friends that are good in that department.
Okay.
I'm a believer in the thought that sometimes, a lot of the times, who you know is a lot more important than what you know.
Okay, and so you're telling me you've got a friend that graduated from Andrews.
Yeah. I have a friend that graduated from Andrews, and he's the person I talked to even before I got the glass, and we were just bouncing ideas off. And then when the opportunity came for me to get it, I was like, hey, I'm going to get this if we're serious about working on this. And she's like, yeah.
Okay, so I think we have a picture of Jamie, right?
Yeah.
Jamie. I don't know, is he available? I mean, I don't know what's going on in the pose there, but anyway, so this is Jamie. When did he graduate?
He graduated 2 years ago now.
Okay. And so, and then you have what, like 4 of you, or?
Yeah, I'm working with another student here, and then a person that I met that's based in Seattle right now who actually has a degree in software engineering. So that was really helpful, and we've been all working together, brainstorming.
Okay, now I think the guy that's from Seattle, I think we have a picture of him. And what's his name again?
Pardon?
The name of the guy?
I told you.
Vinesh?
Vinesh, sorry.
Yeah. Come on, scroll down.
Right. Vinesh.
Vinesh, okay, well now, what's ironic about this, because one of the reasons why that might be hard to recall so quickly under pressure, is that you haven't really known him very long.
This picture I took the first time I went free ICing with Kyle. Met him, we talked for about 30 minutes in front of Michigan Ave. And I gave him, when we free IC, we have a card that links to our Facebook, and our Facebook information's on there. And I told him, hey, if you want to get in touch later, just find me here. A couple weeks after this, he messaged me. He's like, hey, I remember us talking. We talked about what he did, et cetera, and I talked about this because I just got it and I was all excited. And it's like, I'd love to work with you on this project. Initially, I was a little bit hesitant. I was like, working with a total stranger, but we continued to talk, developed a relationship, and I was like, honestly, I think that you'd be really useful in this project, and we've been working since then together.
So you can kind of see a little method to my madness here, if you're paying attention. It sometimes feels like those of us who have committed to Christ have begun to shut the world out far enough that we don't have relationships that we affect. Here in a few minutes of spending time talking to people with no particular strings attached, and this is the interesting deal. When you don't have those strings attached, relationships emerge. You kind of continue on and you talk, and the next thing you know, you have something like this happen, and that's kind of amazing. It's saddening how many Christians there are that really don't have relationships with people that we kind of talk about as some category of group that we care so much about saving, but not really knowing. And that's kind of disturbing a little bit. Well, maybe a lot. Let's go all the way there. Well, you were telling me this too, because I asked you the question, well, so how much do you talk about your faith? And you shared a story about somebody, I think you described it as the longest conversation you've had in the free IC thing.
Yeah, I was out there and a guy walked up to me and we started talking. We talked for about an hour and a half. An hour and a half into our conversation, we were talking about worldview. He was really intelligent. He was breaking his worldview down to me, whatnot. He said, man, today I actually was planning on killing myself because I felt like no one cared about anything I had to say. I felt like I had no voice. And a part of our conversation, we talked about different aspects of his life in terms of relationships that had led to his worldview as well. And when he said that, in my head I was like, whoa. And we just kept on talking after that. Our whole conversation was about 4 hours. And what was really cool was, like after he went because when we're free icing, we're all separate and scattered around. So he came with me. We ate with everybody. He even walked us to our car. And we've touched base since then. When we were leaving, he said, man, you and what you guys are doing right now saved my life, because I really was going to.
It's crazy, because that's not why you did it, is it?
No, I was. It sounds horrible. A piece of me was like upset. I was like, why would you put me in this situation? I don't want to be here dealing with this. Yeah. But what was cool is that we've messaged and stuff since then, and we touched base since then as well. Sorry. We touched base since then, and while we were talking about worldview, he asked what I believe in, and I told him, hey, I'm this. Oh, let me just take these off.
Sure, sure. I'm sorry, but he's busy right now. You're going to have to call back.
But we were talking, and he asked me what I was, and I told him I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. He asked me a little bit my worldview, and then we went back to him. But the last time we were talking, he asked me, hey, I looked up Seventh-day Adventist. You want to tell me more about what you're about? And that was really cool, because I didn't bring that up. Like, I was just keeping in touch, seeing what he's been up to. And then he was like, hey, I looked into what you said you believed in. And we continued to talk.
There's no way to really know, but my guess is that if you had gone straight at trying to talk to him about God, that would not have gone so well.
I can assume. I can only assume.
Right. What really, though, I want to point out, because sometimes it does go great to come right straight out at it. But the bottom line of what I've been interested in, and thank you, Ben, for talking with me and about this and joking around a little bit about your newfangled. Anyway, I think the thing that is of most interest to me is that it is only by being present in the world around us that God can use us in relationships. And so I wonder if maybe there's something God is stirring in your life, in your mind, some idea, something to try, something that's about being present in the world in a way that then God could do something with. And I would suspect it's a little relaxing to know that I can talk and I don't have to be offended. You don't have to be offended. We're talking, and you end up asking me more times than not what I believe about stuff. I know that for me on the golf course, it's always that way, that people want to find out more about you, and you could even decide you don't want to tell, and you'd almost have to lie not to talk about your spirituality because they're asking. And that's the question is, are we present enough in the world around us that people have a chance to ask before we go shouting? I think that's an interesting question for the God who says, you know what, introduce me as I am. I am. Ben, thank you very much for coming up, and sure, hurry and get back to them. They seem incessant about that. Thank you, Ben. So, the way we're going to end tonight, a little bit differently than sometimes anyway. When we finish, you'll end up going out these doors, out these aisles, and there are tables there for you to place in some kind of, faith statement that God can take whatever level of creativity you have and work with it. You're going to place your origami there. We're going to probably gather them all up, take pictures of all your creativity. But if it's so important and wonderful that you want to take it with you, that's fine too. Just remember what it is that we've been up to and we've been doing. Then you'll go on down through those halls and through the opening down the steps, and you'll go to the Ministry Expo. Some of you won't want to, and you can go on to wherever you're going. That's fine. I encourage you to look around at what is going on, to ask yourself, is there a way in which I should be present in the world? Is there something, hey, I encourage you to even try this. Walk over to those balloons that say dream and say, hey, who do I talk to? Who do I talk to? I don't have anything to say. I'm going to challenge you to see if you can get anything creative out of my head. You're welcome to try that even. and just engage in conversation. See the ministries that are there. They're dependent, their survival is dependent on those of us that it really matters that yes, I want to be involved in that ministry. And there's a lot that's out there, and you should check that out. I'm hopeful about God's people, largely because of you. And because I believe God can and is doing a new thing. And I want you to know that, at least in the undergraduate leadership offices, we champion new questions, new idea. We would love to assist you and help you even further down the road if you need. Some of you might be aware that Death Valley is the hottest place on Earth, some would say, but certainly in the Western Hemisphere, hottest place in the Western Hemisphere, over 100 degrees average temperature in the summer times, gets a little cooler in the winter time. It's the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, about 282 feet below sea level, driest place in North America, where they get an average rainfall of just under 2 inches a year. It is, well, Death Valley. I mean, very little grows there, the occasional little shrub or bush or greenery, but not much. Interestingly, in the winter that spanned 2004, 2005, there was an unusual circumstance. It really wreaked havoc on some parts of California with tornadoes and torrential rainfall. But in Death Valley, for a number of days, it rained in just kind of a steady drizzle that kind of soaks the ground and isn't just flash flooding the place. In fact, in 2005, they had somewhere between 6 and, depending on exactly what part of Death Valley, 6 and 8 inches of rainfall in a short span. Temperatures cooled through the part of this, and then something unbelievably miraculous happened. Flowers began to erupt across the valley floor. Flowers, scientists say, whose seeds had been dormant in the ground for at least 50 years. If you were to go to Death Valley now, there wouldn't be flowers. You walk through and there wouldn't be flowers. But this particular occasion, something miraculous happened. And you know what I think the miracle is? Is not that it rains so much. What I think the miracle is that in the midst of all the death, that still down deep in the ground, there was a new thing waiting for just the right time and just the right circumstance, with just a little water given with some level of regularity and sunshine to follow with the right temperatures, and boom. Life, growth, creativity. I don't know if you've felt a little dormant. I don't know if you look around this world or God's church and you feel like it's dormant. Maybe you've been doing the same thing around the rim of the pot for a while. Maybe you're one of those people who haven't had that experience. I want to encourage you tonight to be present for God. Conversations, a new ministry, a new idea, just talking about it with friends. If there's something that you feel is a problem or wrong or isn't there or ought to be there, talk about it. Let God disrupt your life. So again, I'm going to pray over you, and then we're going to show you a video clip that I think you'll enjoy, and it will be, when it ends, the dismissal. Then you'll put the origami offerings of creativity on the tables that you'll see in the back half of the sanctuary. And finally down the steps and out into a good evening where you can check out what is already going on and talk about what maybe ought to be going on. So pray with me. Father, I love you. I love that you have given me the power to be creative. You've given me the responsibility of being your body on earth, to be present for you. If I'm not willing to do this, even rocks will claim your presence. So now, would you agitate us? Would you inspire in us? Would you give us just the right amount of water and sunshine and the perfect temperature that something new would grow up? For the promise of this in your Spirit, we praise your name. Amen.